I'm sorry guys, but I would go broke. Live under the tyranny of pedophiles and obey their orders and turn against my family and my friends, or go broke. Yeah, I would go broke. Because behind the scenes, the Zionist occupiers just got caught deleting sections of the Constitution that protect citizens from unlawful detention. What? Why would they want to remove our protections from being unlawfully detained? I mean, they've convinced our friends to attack us for wearing a keffiyeh. Welcome back to another episode of Political Newbie. I am Noah Clark, and this is a space for newbies to politics like me, an average citizen, waking up from a dream and trying to make sense of the mess that I find myself in. And I thank you so much for joining me, and I really mean that. I don't consider myself very smart, but there are people in the comments telling me that I'm stupid, ignorant, and that my learning sources are garbage. So, okay, fine. But this fight still belongs to all of us, the smart ones and the stupid ones. And I don't think that anyone should be afraid to get involved however they can. Because this is about bravery, risk, and what you're willing to stand up for. So now that I'm finished ranting, try to imagine living in a country where our mothers, fathers, our brothers, our sisters, our best friends, the people that we love, put on a uniform 5 days a week, sometimes doing overtime, just to go to work and beat people up in the streets in order to protect the feelings of child killers, pedophiles, and pedophile protectors. Well, if your imagination sucks, you don't have to imagine, because that's the country we're living in today, and I'm not exaggerating. In the interest of time, I'm going to show you a tiny example of what Donald Trump is trying to make the new normal in his new federalized police city of DC. Okay, you ready? Did you see the police pepper spray an unarmed, non-threatening civilian? And you see all of the cops there, they were walking away because no one was committing a crime, okay? But the cop must have been, I don't know, annoyed that he was being recorded and turned around and unleashed his pepper spray that was already cocked and ready. You know, like it was predetermined. So now we're aware that there are cops roaming the streets with privileges to take their frustrations out on anyone they please. Then they aggressively gang tackle him, right? And now you see this cop who already has one detained reaching out to, I don't know, join the fun because he wanted to be helpful in this football-style takedown. And the goal here is to neutralize an unarmed, non-threatening civilian. This is already looking crazy to me, but I don't know what it's like to be a cop. I don't know what their protocols are. Maybe this is standard procedure and we're just supposed to accept that. I have no idea. And then from out of left field, we have 1, 2, 3 additional cops charging in to join the tackle. Like, were they just standing around waiting for an opportunity to jump on someone? Like, was that even necessary? But still, maybe I'm being way too critical. So let's just see how this goes down. In all this commotion, you probably missed when this guy with the circle around his head charges onto the scene with enthusiasm because he needs to get something very important done. So I took it back here. He's running in. There he is. Okay. He's trying to get, and you see he shook something, and now he has pepper spray cocked. Now this is somebody's son or father or brother charging in here. It is very important to note that at this point, this takedown event does not need his input whatsoever. But he is so compelled to pepper spray someone in the face, he races in with his pepper spray cocked and ready. There he is, right there. Yep. He got the opening, and he sprays. And then he walks away, his adrenaline rush satisfied. He has something to joke about with the boys in the group chat later in the day when things cool down, right? He's feeling good. Wouldn't it be nice to know if this was one of the police officers who got their badge at the police academy in Tel Aviv, where you're trained to go after your own? Yeah, it's really difficult to know if the police force intentionally tries to recruit high school bully types, or if they're trained into it, or if it just evolves naturally in law enforcement culture. Hard to tell. But clearly, some of these people are batshit crazy. So now you got 6 to 7 really aggressive cops being guarded by satellite cops to protect the takedown of this one unarmed man from the mob of bloodthirsty civilians standing around. The guy is down. He's down. I really hope that this innocent man who did not commit a crime is not claustrophobic. I hope he could breathe as they put their full weight on his back, pressing his chest into the hard pavement while everyone's thighs and crotch are covering his head and face. Absolutely savage. Savage. And then Charlie Kirk retweets a celebratory post by the U.S. Attorney of the District of Columbia, Jeanine Pirro, who announces that after the federal takeover of D.C., over 400 criminals have already been arrested, including sex pests, illegals, and drug traffickers. No one, not even me, is naive enough to believe that the Zionists can ever be honest, right? There's no one left who really thinks that. Is there? You must realize at this point that these people will literally melt if their brain tried to conjure up the truth. But obviously, this violence, this barbarity between the cops and innocent civilians is by design. In the sense that there has always been a deliberate attempt on micro and macro levels to maintain extreme tension between cops and the communities that they are meant to serve and protect. Communities that our Zionist-controlled government pump tons and tons of drugs and weapons into to infect our children and vulnerable adults who are trying to recover from all different degrees of traumas, and we can all relate to this. And after these communities have been poisoned by drugs and ultra-processed foods and discriminatory policies, the government sends the police force in to clean it up with an emphasis on rewarding bad behavior. I'm convinced of this. Because when I see what's happening here, it reminds me of what the Iraq War veteran turned journalist, Seth Harp, has been saying on his publicity tour recently, raising awareness on the topic of how bad behavior in our military is rewarded and how it is eroding the moral and ethical fabric of our peers in uniform. Listen to what he has to say about it.
We've talked about the New York Times revealing a trove of confidential military interviews with the Navy SEALs who accused Chief Edward Gallagher of war crimes. He met with President Trump at Trump's private resort in Mar-a-Lago weeks after Trump overruled his own military leaders and blocked them from disciplining Gallagher, despite him being convicted of posing with a teenage corpse in a high-profile war crimes case. In the never-before-released videos, the soldiers tell Navy investigators Gallagher was toxic and freaking evil.
Trump's cozying up to war criminals like Eddie Gallagher is one of the most deplorable features of his administration, and is an illustration of the incredibly deleterious effect that Trump's malignant command influence has had on the entire special operations community. Because Eddie Gallagher is somebody who was turned in by his own teammates who are far from bleeding heart liberals. These are active duty Navy SEALs fighting in Mosul and Iraq who see their chief murdering people right and left, men, women, children, unarmed people. He was caught on video about to stab that teenage ISIS fighter in the neck. His teammates wanted him gone. The Navy SEAL command wanted him gone. But Trump saw an opportunity to make guys like Eddie Gallagher part of his personal political brand. He also pardoned people like Matthew Goldstein, who was a Green Beret officer who admitted to committing murder on live television. Other people that Trump has made part of his retinue, some of the craziest people in the special operations community. You know, there are people in this community who do go by a sense of ethics and who are not so criminally inclined. And the more Trump is in office and doing things like this, the fewer you have of those people, and the more you have of the sort of piratical types like Eddie Gallagher staying in and rising higher in the ranks. And you see that in the kind of fallout of the domestic crime that I describe in my book.
Now, this is an extreme version of how our leaders are intentionally corrupting our institutions from the ground up. But imagine that. Trump degrading our military and armed forces by pardoning the most evil of war criminals among them. I think about that same culture of shielding or rewarding psychotic behavior happening in our local precincts. This is the kind of behavior that drives a wedge between the community and their peers in uniform, who we should feel safe around if we're law-abiding citizens. But this culture of protecting the bad apples sends a strong signal to the other officers that if you're too good, you could potentially get pushed out. So, you don't have to go around beating up people, but you do have to provide cover when it's happening because you're one of us. And in this culture, the most radical and depraved ones rise through the ranks and become minions for the drug trafficking pedophiles in our government. And when Seth Harp eventually meets with Tucker to do an interview, he does a really good job at summarizing the effect serving in a highly immoral and corrupt system has on our loved ones who put on the uniform.
When it happens in the Senate, you're like, okay, of course Ted Cruz is corrupt, look at him. But when it happens among people most civilians revere, like, the most elite units in the U.S. military, that's dispiriting, among other things, right?
I think it is. And I think my inclination is to think that it is a result of waging wars that nobody really believes in for years and years, because think about what that does to your psychology. When you're engaged in a righteous cause that has widespread societal buy-in, you're going to be constrained by your own sense of yourself as a virtuous actor. And you're going to know that when you're tempted to do things for money or for other motives, that's not consistent with your self-image. And so you don't do it. But when you're fighting for years in wars like Afghanistan that the public just doesn't even pay attention to, and you know all your allies are drug traffickers and they're raping little boys and that they're trafficking sex slaves, but you're just doing it because you like your work and you like being an elite soldier, then it's easier to take a mercenary attitude towards this and just think it's not going to matter if I skim, $100,000 off the top of the op fund that we have out here in the field, all this cash that we're given. Or it's no big deal for me to grab a couple of bricks of this heroin and sell it for 50 grand when I get back to Fayetteville.
That's a perfect summation of what my instincts are, that the more morally corrupt the enterprise is, the more morally corrupt the people participating in the enterprise become.
Yeah. Now, this is an absolutely necessary interview for all law enforcement people to watch in full. But it's like the purpose of encouraging and rewarding the bad apples is to incentivize others who want to be bad to be bad. Get wild, get rough. No one understands how tough the job is. So if you want to let off some steam by pepper spraying innocent civilians on the street, dragging them by the hair to the ground, or murdering civilians in cold blood when you're on tour in the military, let it out. That's the message, right? You don't have to know that we're intentionally manufacturing these dangerous situations that we're forcing you into, that we're the ones poisoning your communities and your families with drugs and ultra-processed foods and porn, and then asking you to police it. And our peers in uniform who do go by a sense of ethics and who are law-abiding are left to be intimidated. In the case of Donald Trump and the Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer type soldier, if you did the right thing and report a bad apple, they may get promoted and now they're your superior. That's the culture of the armed forces that our Zionist-occupied government has engendered. And this must certainly be why there are cries to defund the police, because I think most of us would defend the uniform our friends and families don when they sign up to be officers if there was honor in it. Leadership has stripped the honor and ethics out of the job, which is to say, every member of the armed forces who does not agree with this kind of behavior should be walking out. But instead, we're getting IDF 2.0. And remember, the IDF is so vacuous that they will kill their own people if they're commanded to. This is not an exaggeration. If you don't believe me, check out episode 19. The receipts and the testimonies of 10/7 survivors speak for themselves and are irrefutable. And you absolutely must burn these truths into your memory because the tech bros are coming for the receipts. They're gonna set them on fire, okay? And then we're all gonna be doubting ourselves. So here's your reminder, do not doubt yourself. You saw the receipts. And if you haven't already seen the receipts, there's only one thing you need to remember to make this really simple. Our government protects pedophiles. Make that your morning mantra. Our government protects pedophiles. Anyone who's pro-Israel at this point is a pedophile apologist who supports the police and army murdering their own people because they were told to, as was the case on 10/7. And I, personally, will be giving those people the finger rather than debating them. So as Donald Trump moves to federalize the police in this pilot program he's conducting in DC, we know it's not about crime. If the thugs on Capitol Hill cared about crime, they would have started with the Epstein network. Show a country you're serious by arresting the most sinister criminals first, rather than rewarding them and covering for them. Instead, what we're witnessing here is Donald Trump fulfilling his promise to his friends and his donors. Think about it. He already told us that he's going to transform federal land into freedom cities, and Americans are suspecting that DC will be the first one, which, as people are also putting together, he will eventually hand over to the AI overlords Thiel and co. Here's Donald Trump making the announcement in his own words.
Almost 1/3 of the landmass of the United States is owned by the federal government. With just a very, very small portion of that land, we should hold a contest to charter up to 10 new cities and award them to the best proposals for development. In other words, we'll actually build new cities in our country again. These freedom cities will reopen the frontier, reignite American imagination, and give hundreds of thousands of young people and other people, all hardworking families, a new shot at home ownership and, in fact, the American dream.
Wow, that sounds really promising, doesn't it? And he made this announcement back in March of 2023. And I'm going to read you 2 examples of the responses people had back then, okay? Here's a really optimistic one. As an engineer, I would love to be a part of developing new communities where population, food production, agriculture, and biology in general are balanced to support the community in the best way. If there's any way that I can contribute to projects like that, I would welcome it in a heartbeat. But here's a comment a little bit more on the cynical side. Could this be another name for the smart cities or 15-minute cities being shoved down people's throats in some countries and proposed here in the US? just under a sweet-sounding name. Now, before this year, I never even heard of 15-minute cities, so this is really new to me, but apparently 2 years ago and probably before, people knew about this. So knowing what we know now, that Donald Trump does not work for America, that he is a Zionist plant working for the transnational elite gangs that he belongs to, knowing that he demoralizes our army forces by promoting the most rotten of them all, poisoning the professional, ethical, and moral fabric of our brave officers, something only an anti-American Zionist leader would do. How would you feel about what people are saying today about what Trump's agenda really is and what is actually going on in DC? Here is the Patriot Voice. Part of this philosophy includes breaking the country into separate zones to be governed and ruled by billionaire tech elites. Trump has mentioned freedom cities as far back as 2019 and more recently said he wants to build 10 of them. The goal is to eventually have an AI president, and that is why Musk said which AI will be president in 2032. He wasn't kidding. He was telling you what the plan is.
He's going to win the White House in 2024.
Who do you think will win the White House in 2032? Which type of AI? Transformers or the fusion?
If you recall, Trump has also said on a few occasions that if you voted for him in 2024, then you wouldn't have to vote again. Also, don't forget about the last president prophecy.
If you want to save America, get your friends, get your family, get everyone you know, and vote. Vote early, vote absentee, vote on election day. I don't care how, but you have to get out and vote. And again, Christians, get out and vote. Just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed, it'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians. I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I love you. Get out. You gotta get out and vote. In 4 years, you don't have to vote again. We'll have it fixed so good you're not gonna have to vote.
So you could say here that he wasn't really saying in general that you're not going to have to vote again. He was speaking specifically to the Christians there and saying, I know you don't like to participate in the vote, but just do it this time, and then you'll never have to do it again because we're going to have the country so fixed that you won't have anything to worry about. That could be the interpretation of that, or he could really be saying, trust me, wink, wink, you're not gonna have to vote again. But then he says it again just the other day to Zelensky, like yesterday or 2 days ago.
So you say during the war you can't have elections. So let me just say 3.5 years from now. So you mean if we happen to be in a war with somebody, no more elections? Oh, that's good. I wonder what the fake.
You like this idea?
No.
What kind of conversations are these people having at dinner amongst themselves, you wonder? And then they come out here and they joke with us, but then they're like kind of serious. I don't know. Yeah, and then the Patriot Voice says, they plan on turning America into a giant AI-controlled prison filled with 15-minute freedom cities where your every move is controlled, monitored, and you will be given UBI and eventually forced to take the mark to buy and sell. Now, there isn't a single thing that Donald Trump has done thus far to indicate that the plan is any different from what I'm reading right now. Here is Diligent Denizen, another ex-user. If I told you that the deep state was letting Trump build Alligator Alcatraz and similar detention centers, a massive federal police force, and the ultimate AI surveillance state so they can use it on you, would you believe me? But you know what my biggest and most recent question is? When has good or reasonable or sensible ever conquered evil? Has it ever? Like in a big way? And when we say good, what is good? Because maybe we're all just deluded and we cannot see that we're the evil ones. And that's why we've been losing all this time. Maybe it's evil to fight and demand accountability for pedophiles and child killers. And from that perspective, good has been winning all along. And all the genociding and human trafficking and drug trafficking and mass poisoning is for the greater good. So that's why our mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters put on their uniforms every day and beat us up in the streets with fury and conviction for protesting the goodness, the order, and the obedience that our good government wants to impose on us.
You're gonna get more charges if you don't stop.
He's on the sidewalk!
We're on the fucking sidewalk, you piece of shit! We're on the fucking sidewalk!
Maybe that's what's happening and we just can't see it clearly. So in that case, Thomas Massie got it very twisted when he made this statement. Why is Trump sending troops to DC to fight crime during the recess? All the criminals went home to their districts. And he's referring to the pedophile protectors in Congress who took a group trip to Israel, the place where pedophiles go when they want to hide and escape justice, because they didn't want to vote on releasing the Epstein files. No, Massie, they're not the criminals. Apparently we are. That's why they're always winning. They're triumphant over the evil that we are. Or they are the evil ones, and is good going to conquer evil this time? Are we going to win? Either way, it's not looking really good for us. According to this man, Dudley Brown, Donald Trump is now moving to enforce a Biden-era policy that would effectively de-arm us. He says the White House is moving to adopt an illegal Biden-era gun control rule enforcing the UN Small Arms Treaty in America. And they're doing it in just 12 days before the UN's gun control summit in Geneva. So I looked this up, and there is in fact a conference of states parties to the Arms Trade Treaty scheduled for August 25th to 29th in Geneva. And you can see the screenshot of the website Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs that he has here, which I did go to that website to check on what he's posting here. And he says the impact that it's going to have, well, massive revenue loss for U.S. manufacturers, layoffs across the firearms industry, higher prices for American consumers, and less innovation and fewer options on the market. This rule directly advances the UN's civilian disarmament agenda. It helps oppressive regimes disarm their people while undermining the industry that arms free people here at home. Now, I'll have a link to the full thread on my X account and let me know what you think about that. But I'll tell you something super sus, okay? I went to the .gov website to fact check this and couldn't find anything. The website functioned and everything, and I could navigate the website, but every time I looked up the revisions of firearm license requirement, I kept getting an error. And I thought that was odd. So I was like, okay, maybe it's my phone. So I tried to access the link from another device, and suddenly the website was down for maintenance and has been down for maintenance, for me at least, ever since. Which is really odd because some shady stuff is going down with the tech bros wiping the internet to hide what they're doing. For example, remember those war crime videos that the IDF used to post on social media and dating apps? Well, Elon, or the CIA Mossad people taking over X, are beginning to scrub X of all of this evidence. The X account Israel exposed sounded the alarm the other day. He goes, X has been quietly deleting war crime videos without notification or flagging the posts. Like this. This was a couple of days ago. Luckily, this Israel exposed account has been archiving it on watermeloncrimes.com, and I bookmarked that website months ago in anticipation for this very event. A moment in time when the tech lords would try to erase history, rewriting history in real time. And it's giving me chills because I literally posted about this in episode 9 back in May. Reading about this, and they're going to be reading it as conspiracy theories. And you and me who are living through this right now are going to be considered conspiracy theorists. They're going to repeat the same narrative that they did to the generation before us. It's going to happen to us. And, you know, we have to hope that we're all working to prevent that from happening. However, I feel like it may be impossible with this European Union Digital Act and all the censorship rules that they're trying to impose to pretty much wipe everything off the internet, to rewrite history. And our children are going to be growing up in this world. They're going to be adults in this new reality. I feel like this little bit of freedom that we have right now is the last of it. And what's even more chilling is that I am only just recently trying to connect dots, trying to understand what's happening without being fully versed in geopolitics and politics. And either I'm way off base here in my deductions, or it's that obvious what's happening here. And so there is no excuse for educated and informed people to not have seen the patterns and the big picture. Worse, to still be skeptical about what's happening. But yeah, they also just scrubbed the Israeli pedophile Tom Alexandrovich's LinkedIn account off the internet. His crime isn't even cold yet, and they're already scrubbing. It's giving getting rid of JFK's car vibes. You know, but just another Israeli pedophile who got caught and was allowed to go back to Israel. And Max Blumenthal was on top of it right away. He posted this article in the Gray Zone. Did Israeli-born U.S. attorney help accused Israeli child sex predator and cyber spy flee the U.S.? And we already know that Max Blumenthal is a self-hating anti-Semitic Jew for noticing, and we are anti-Semitic for noticing, that Jews have special privileges in our country to rape our children with impunity. You know how everyone tries to stamp us as Hamas sympathizers every time we say that Palestinians have a right to defend themselves? Yeah, if you meet someone who is trying to make a case for Israel or who's just pro-Israel, stamp them as a pedophile apologist. Like a big, fat stamp. Let's start wielding that word around with impunity, okay? But if you just take a step back for a moment, you see what's happening right now, don't you? They can't do a full-out ban on speech in America, at least like not right at this moment. So they're scrubbing their digital footprint. Prepare for this, America. We need to start keeping screenshot archives because the gaslighting is about to reach maximum super sane levels. And just to be clear regarding Donald Trump being the man that Joe Biden couldn't be in going after our Second Amendment rights head on, Thomas Massie posted this on August 14th. The police troops in DC should quit arresting people for carrying a firearm without a permit. They're publishing this metric as if it's something to be proud of, but it's not. In high crime areas like DC, people rely on their right to keep and bear arms to keep them safe. I do. Now, I'm inclined to trust Massie on almost all things, but what high crime are they talking about? Is it really that bad out there? Because the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia just posted this article in January that violent crime in DC hits a 30-year low. And you can read the full article on my X account. So what are they talking about? Who's lying? Who's uninformed? Is Massie just taking Donald Trump's word for it at this point?
Saying a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor, and worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back. Under the authorities vested in me as the President of the United States, I'm officially invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. You know what that is? And placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control, and you'll be meeting the people that will be directly involved with that.
Because Donald Trump is a Zionist, we know he's not telling the truth. That's just a default now. If you're a Zionist, you're not telling the truth, okay? So he's not telling the truth. On very, very rare occasions, a truth slips out of Donald Trump's mouth, but it's extraordinarily rare. So whether or not that post before about Donald Trump enforcing a Biden-era gun control policy that will effectively begin disarming us, Thomas Massie just confirmed that there is a move to start going after our guns. And we know that their end goal is definitely to leave us defenseless while our loved ones are out there in uniform being encouraged to violently tackle unarmed, innocent civilians to the ground in DC. If you don't believe me, take a look.
I hope a good one comes up next. Back up! Back up! Back up! Bullshit! Back up! That's bullshit! Excessive fucking force! Back up! No, we are. This is our amendment right. Bullshit! He does not need to be tackled like that. Stand back. Police, stand back. He is a veteran of this country. What the fuck is wrong with this guy? I'm a serious. He is a veteran of this country.
Wow.
A bunch of bitches. He's a veteran.
So what exactly did that guy do? Was he on Palantir's hit list? You know, like, was he being naughty? Am I to take Larry Ellison, one of our unelected leaders working with Donald Trump on Project Stargate, at his word when he said that people who are not on their best behavior will be targeted, whatever his definition of best behavior is?
The police will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording, watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on. It's unimpeachable. The cars have cameras on them. I think we have a squad car here someplace. But those kind of applications using AI, if we can use AI, and we're using AI to monitor the video. So if that altercation that occurred in Memphis, the chief of police would be immediately notified. It's not people that are looking at those cameras. It's AI that's looking at the camera. No. You can't do this. It would be like a shooting. That's going to be immediately, that's going to be an event that's immediately, an alarm is going to go off. It's going to be, and we're going to have supervision. In other words, every police officer is going to be supervised.
Isn't it kind of creepy that these tech billionaires all seem to have the same stutter? And is it just me, but why do these billionaires not look healthier? Anyway, when they say that our friends and families in uniform will be so surveilled that they will be on their best behavior, and we know that they reward the most mentally deranged officers, can you imagine the stress that our loved ones are going to be under in this new world while they still have their jobs before drones and robots replace them? I'm sorry, guys, but I would go broke. Live under the tyranny of pedophiles and obey their orders and turn against my family and my friends? or go broke? Yeah, I would go broke. I mean, listen to some of these Zionists going full Gaza, West Bank, 40 beheaded babies on us right now in America. These people are not right in the head, okay?
Then Washington, D.C. must be swept clean. I believe entire neighborhoods probably need to be emptied, need to be bulldozed. I believe that there are places that are so crime-ridden and so infested that you just need to, you're just going to have to crack down. You're going to have to do the job, and you're going to have to get the crime out of Washington.
This is the agenda, small-scale ethnic cleansing in major cities. They're not just going after Hamas, criminals in DC. They're going after everybody. These cities need to be bulldozed, emptied out.
I believe entire neighborhoods probably need to be emptied, need to be bulldozed.
So far, the only criminal we've seen them take down in DC, apart from the guy recording a cop, is this criminal.
Motherfucker! Oh! Fucking God! Fucking God!
They believe that whole neighborhoods should be emptied of sandwich throwers and anyone recording the police on their phones.
These sanctuary city mayors, DOJ's been very clear. They had a deadline to comply with federal law and hand over the criminal illegal aliens in their custody, the child rapists, the child predators, the drug traffickers, the human traffickers.
So last week I sent out 32 letters to mayors around the country, and I believe to 7 governors telling them you better comply or you're next. If they don't comply with this, Larry, we're going to work with our other agencies to cut off their federal funding. We are going to send in law enforcement just like we did during the LA riots, just like we're doing here in Washington, D.C.
All while DHS and ICE have not sent out their monthly updates on deportation statistics. I wonder why. You see how stupid they think we are? They keep trying to propagandize us into believing that this is about illegal immigrants and criminals and homeless people. Whatever's happening here, America, it's at our doorstep. We've completely run out of time and the situation is urgent. What really concerns me the most about this is that this leads to eerily similar scenarios like REX 84, Operation Garden Plot, subsection of Department of Defense Civil Disturbance Plan 55-2, regulating large-scale suppression, arrest, and detainment of civilians in an emergency, and Jade Helm 15, a military exercise where armed troops from the NG, Army, Navy, and Air Force conducted drills concerning unconventional warfare scenarios where certain states were labeled as hostile and empty Walmarts were used to detain American citizens. So I had to look up what Jade Helm 15 was because I'd never heard about it before, and this is one of the things I found that I'm going to share with you now.
In 2015, something strange happened across the American Southwest, an operation called Jade Helm 15. Officially, it was a military training exercise, but those of us who paid attention saw something deeper, something darker. Jade Helm claimed it was about training U.S. soldiers in unconventional warfare, but the tagline said it all. Master the human domain. That wasn't just about battlefields overseas. That was about us, the American people. Soldiers were walking around neighborhoods, not in uniform, but acting like American citizens. They weren't pretending to be foreign troops or police. They said things like, I'm an American citizen and I know my rights. It was all to make the training feel like the real thing. Around the same time, something else quietly shifted. Snapchat was introduced to the public, a fun social media app that just happened to rely on facial recognition. At the same time, Walmart stores began upgrading their surveillance. Sharper cameras, zoom lenses, facial tracking. And the very Walmarts that shut down during Jade Helm were among the first to get these upgrades. The theory, these stores were being quietly converted, prepared to act as detention centers in case of civil unrest. Under Trump's first term, we saw immigrant families actually detained inside Walmarts. That part wasn't a theory, that was real.
That part wasn't a theory, it was real. And just replace Walmarts with Alligator Alcatraz, for example, and it's easy to see how related and similar these operations really are. Now, couple that with an extremely advanced and federalized AI surveillance police state. And then on August 16th, he posts this. As much as we are being absolutely gaslit and lied to about the fact that this is all because of illegal immigrants and homeless people, only truly smart and perceptive people understand that this is part of the age-old Hegelian dialectic, where they intentionally create the problem to then offer a solution. And he's absolutely right. Because behind the scenes, the Zionist occupiers just got caught deleting sections of the Constitution that protect citizens from unlawful detention. What? Why would they want to remove our protections from being unlawfully detained? Not to mention, there is a virus outbreak at Alligator Alcatraz where it's estimated that 80% of the detainees are sick, like serious COVID-like symptoms sick, and the conditions are extremely unhygienic and inhumane. IDF prison style, I suspect. And detainees are packed into cages by the hundreds without sunlight, with overflowing toilets, limited access to showers, and medical neglect. Now imagine being unlawfully detained as an innocent civilian and being sent to that. And of course, like Israel, no inspections are allowed. Governor Ron DeSantis had to be sued before allowing very limited inspections. Ian Carroll, James Lee, we need a comprehensive report on this stat. Now back to the Zionist occupiers getting caught deleting sections of the Constitution that protect citizens from unlawful detention. Here's a snippet of what was published on August 7th. Why parts of the Constitution went missing from US government website. The Library of Congress, which maintains the website, blamed the missing text on a coding error. Critics, however, were quick to point out that the missing sections happened to be the constitutional clauses President Donald Trump has targeted since taking office for a second term. The missing sections included part of Article 1, Section 8, and all of Section 9 and 10 of Article 1, according to TechCrunch. And the full article is available on my X account. We need to wake our friends and families up who don the badge and uniform, and fast. I suspect that no one's digital footprint is more surveilled than our armed peers serving in our law enforcement and our army. So their leashes must be really tight. Larry Ellison seemed very concerned about keeping them on their best behavior. But they're our families, they're our friends, and we're in this together. And it's happening everywhere. The transnational pedophile gangster mob are coordinating their efforts to sick our own friends and family in uniform on us as we peacefully gather and protest.
We're witnessing the end of our democracy in this country.
Shame on you! Shame on you!
Are you a terrorist? I don't know. I don't think so. I held a piece of cardboard. They can be pretty sharp.
Shame on you!
Terrorist laws are being used entirely inappropriately. And if you're a protester of any sort, you should be very fearful. They'll come for you too.
In recent months, it's become clear that you only have freedom of speech when you are talking about something the government doesn't mind you talking about.
Are you comfortable protecting Israeli arms factories? You have a choice to do the moral thing, to take your uniforms off, to sit down, be with the people.
Put your gloves back in your pocket and leave her alone.
Huh? Can you imagine how powerful that would be if you stood against it?
You don't have to do this.
I'm being arrested for holding a piece of paper.
Thank you for saving us from grannies. My sister's rapist is still out there. Thank you though. These grandmas need putting away.
You are losing the support of the public.
This country is not upholding international law.
I mean, I'm as happy as a clam I'm being paid to be here.
The people of the UK are not going to just stand there and watch you silence us. We will not be intimidated and we will keep on going for what we believe is right.
And it's also pretty bad in Germany as well. It's just not necessary to be this aggressive towards an innocent civilian who is not being aggressive. But apparently it's not difficult to convince us to turn on each other. I mean, they've convinced our friends to attack us for wearing a keffiyeh. And I have to say we now, because we need to unite transnationally. And when I see that our peers in uniform are being used to fight their battles, I think of this IDF soldier who testified at the Knesset that he was issued a stand-down order on 10/7 by his superiors hours before they were ambushed by the Palestinian resistance. He was lucky to make it out alive, yes, but lost his leg and now he's traumatized, unable to bring himself to even think that his government, even while he was on duty and wearing the uniform, would leave him to die. And I'm gonna read the subtitles of this video for you, okay? I've been living with this since October 7th. And I was very afraid to talk about it. And when I got to the Knesset, it was after a period when I asked some senior army officers what actually happened there. And there were some who initially told me, listen, there was a sniper threat from Nakba on the fence, so we didn't want to send soldiers so they wouldn't get hit. And then over time, it kind of dawned on me. And I said, wait, if there's a sniper threat, how can it be that I, who am only 200 meters from the fence, don't know there's a threat? How can it be that my friends are fighting without a vest, in their underwear and socks, and nobody knows that something is happening? We're only 200 to 300 meters from the fence. And look, like you're saying, to a lot of people, it sounds strange. And we're going back to this again. And I'll be honest, Hilla, I've been living with some kind of hole in my brain since October 7th. That something in my heart feels to me that, listen, I don't know what was there. I want to understand what happened like everyone. So suddenly this thing popped up and this recording was published. And what can I tell you? Like me, like you, like all the people of Israel, I want to understand what happened on October 7th. I lost many, many friends. I was seriously injured. I want to understand what happened there. And suddenly this thing came out, the statement. It scares me. It scares me a lot. I hope we'll have clearer answers later on and not to jump to conclusions and not to worry an entire country. But it's very important that there are unequivocal answers here. And whoever needs to pay the price should pay the price. So many murdered, kidnapped. It's something that I, as a soldier who served in the Gaza sector, I'm telling you, for every little thing, we would jump to the fence. For every little thing. It scares me. It scares me to think what happened there. I feel for the guy. He's trying to process it and he's trying to move on. He wants unequivocal answers. He wants the truth, but he already knows the truth and cannot bear to face it. That's what's happening there. No matter how well you wear the uniform, no matter how obedient you are, you will never be a part of the elite club unless we restore honor, ethics, and integrity to our armed forces. I haven't heard anyone say this yet, but much of our hope resides in the bravery of our peers in arms. When they put on their badges, they are still our family members, our best friends, people that we love, and they're on our team. We have to reach out to them and remind them of that. I mean, look at this guy. He could be our brother, and he's being weaponized by the elites for what?
Being detained for any reason? What's going on here? Could you tell us? A stop? What happened?
He failed to pay his fare.
He failed to pay his fare. Why is the FBI here for fare evasion?
Do you watch the news?
I do watch the news, yeah. We're actually part of the news.
Why is the FBI in D.C., period?
You tell me.
No.
It's a good question.
You tell me.
I'm here to ask you. You seem to be the expert here. Why is the FBI here? For a fare evasion case.
No.
And why is Homeland Security here for fare evasion?
They're not here for fare evasion.
So what was Homeland Security here doing?
They're here supporting everybody in D.C. with the same focus.
So the focus of Homeland Security and the FBI is fare evasion?
No, the focus of me and this officer right now is fare evasion.
Okay.
But they're going to support everything that we do, just like we support everything that they do.
Several unmarked vehicles of agents who are now leaving due to the massive community response.
Streets! Our streets! Our streets!
So the residents of DC had a small victory where they chased out FBI, HSI, and other law enforcement officials because it is unnecessary to militarize our neighborhoods for fare evaders, sandwich throwers, and peaceful protesters. But you can see that that officer was convinced he was doing the right thing. And yes, in theory, they have been convinced that they are being deployed to target violent criminals, even though they're not encountering them in practice out in the field. And I don't think they realize that it's the actual violent criminals like the Epstein Network and Big Pharma and Big Ag, poisoning them and their families, all of us, that are sicking them on their fellow citizens. They're working for the violent criminals. When social credit scores, algorithmic surveillance, and robotic policing replaces our family and friends in law enforcement, they will enter the arena of the targeted with the rest of us, and I really don't think that they've seen that far ahead. They are as expendable as that IDF soldier that you just saw who is desperate to live in denial, lest he think for himself and find the truth tugging at his consciousness, that not even his uniform and obedience saves him. But here we are. Over time, the elites have effectively turned us against each other. We don't trust law enforcement because of the long history of corruption, of how easily our families can be weaponized against us by the criminal enterprise that is our government. If we felt that we could report an incident where a cop crossed the line and knew that his or her superiors would properly investigate and discipline them, the public would have more faith in law enforcement. And if the media would provide all the evidence when reporting a story when a civilian was hurt by a cop, instead of purposely framing it in a way where the cop is always bad, our peers in arms would not feel alienated when they're on duty. But the relationship between the public and law enforcement was intentionally curated over time to foster distrust and antagonism. In the same way the IDF were trained to see Palestinians as enemies so that when the time came, they could commit a genocide on command, even kill their own if so ordered. There are many ways to resist, and resist we must. They have different layers of oppression. We have different layers of resistance. Some board the flotilla to try and break the siege. Others fund that mission. While some inform and others march. Some are constantly reprogramming Grok to tell truths from the inside, while others go to battle at the courts. But what of the badges, the uniforms? We must remember that we will never be on the side of the elites. And while we can learn to live with them, it's they who have no idea how to live with us. They will always expect us to be on our hands and knees for them. Expect us to show our gratitude for the poisoned food they sell us by allowing them to steal our children for their pleasure and rituals without complaint. Allowing them to inject us with their experiments and not blame them when things go wrong. And when they order our friends to aim their tanks at us, it's an affront to them when we throw stones in retaliation. And while we are putting on the uniform and following their orders blindly, beating each other up for them, they reserve the right to abuse and rape our children and escape to Israel to live freely with impunity. That's who we're fighting for. Resist it. Remember who the heroes really are. We are. We've always been brave and we've always had to risk it all to fight for our freedoms. Isn't it kind of funny how that Superman movie dropped just at the right time to remind us of that?
What happens when a superhero movie made without any political agenda starts to look uncomfortably like reality?
I saw the new Superman film last night. Tell me why it is as anti-Israel as people are making out to be.
What some are calling a tone-deaf coincidence ends up revealing something far more unsettling about Hollywood itself. Because what this really reveals is Hollywood's blindness. It shows that studios are often more comfortable exploring themes of resistance and justice in fictional settings than they are addressing them in real life.
In fact, that's the position Anand takes on one of Tucker Carlson's recent episodes as she sympathizes with the plight of the extraordinarily brave but vulnerable and defenseless who resist the brutal militarized occupation of the elites.
Because I don't think it's Islamic terror that's taking place in the first place. I think we have to disabuse ourselves of that notion that this is a battle between Muslim and Jew. Constantly you heard after the October event was that Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. Even to this day we hear it's Hamas, yes. Hamas, Hamas. What is Hamas? Hamas are people who have had their homes taken from them, who if they live in Gaza have not been able, basically been in an open air prison for certainly the last 20 years. Even when the Israelis withdrew from Gaza, they didn't leave open borders. There was no freedom for people in Gaza to develop their economy.
And when you hear stories like that, you wonder, why are the helpless people trapped in an open air prison our enemies, and not the ones who are constantly surveilling us and have the capacity to militarize our neighborhoods, take away our guns and turn us against each other? I mean, Seth Harp essentially told Tucker the other day that our Zionist-occupied government used our peers in arms as their personal army to invade Afghanistan after the 9/11 false flag event so that they can seize their poppy fields over there and make heroin, which they then used to unleash a heroin pandemic on the American population with devastating effect, and then asked our police officers to handle it after blaming the drug epidemic on the Taliban. Here's what the Army vet turned reporter discovers.
The Taliban took over after the U.S. withdrew in 2021 and then proceeded to do exactly what they had done in the year 2000 and 2001, which was to completely eradicate all drugs from the country. And up until then, we had been told, to the extent that drug production in Afghanistan came up, we were always told that it was the Taliban, that the insurgency and the drug production were just two sides of the same coin.
Liars, yes.
But the best lies are the ones that are 180-degree opposite of the truth.
Exactly.
What gave me the confidence to hit as hard as I could in this narrative was seeing the Taliban in 2023. They completed another eradication campaign where they once again totally eliminated heroin production and drug production from Afghanistan. So at that point, I had doubts as a reporter because I'm not omniscient and, there's always this conflicting information. So I kind of doubt my own conclusions. I'm thinking, well, they must have been involved to some degree. We hear that said so often from the most prestigious institutions of media and government. There must be some truth to it. But seeing the Taliban totally eliminate drugs from their country again made me realize, okay, this was always a one-sided thing. It wasn't that both sides were involved in it.
You want to get really red-pilled? You want to make it almost hard to live here? Look up Taliban drug treatment. You're in your early 40s, I think. So you've lived in this country a long time, and you must know people who've been ensnared in drugs or died from drugs. Ask yourself, super simple question. Is the Taliban drug treatment program, you can look this up, there are videos of it online.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Does it produce a higher or lower relapse rate than the American version in, say, Delray Beach, Florida? Are the Taliban better at getting people off opioids than we are? And the answer is not just yes, but hell yes, way better, because they don't wean them off with methadone. This whole thing is a freaking lie. By the way, a lot of people get rich off that. You know who you are if you're listening. Some of them are big political donors who get rich on drug treatment programs. Disgusting. And it doesn't work. It works for some small percentage, but it doesn't work for most. That's for sure. and a lot of them die, and they never lead productive, joyful lives. And the Taliban have a faith-based, I know I'm going to probably get pulled off YouTube for saying this, but it's true. I'm saying this as a Christian, not a Muslim. They have a faith-based, no-nonsense, zero intoxicant policy in their rehab, and it works.
And he even has to like qualify just making a truthful statement. We're so afraid to like praise other cultures, other faiths for the good that they do, that we have to qualify everything that we say. Why? These are the principles, by the way, that we need to defend and protect. Being able to speak freely and speak truths freely. We should not have to be looking over our shoulders every time we tell the truth. What Tucker and Seth are talking about right here, do you know what that means? That we don't have a drug problem in our country. We have an elite problem in our country. Because that's where all of our problems originate from. It's not the Taliban or the Mexican cartel pumping drugs into our neighborhoods. It's our government. Because if the elites really wanted to make America great again, the drug epidemic we have in this country would never have existed. If the Taliban can do it, we can do it 100 times better. We have all the resources. So you realize that our occupied government is using nations, including ours, as its dumping ground and blaming it on everyone else. Here's a Sudanese investigative journalist, David Houdayan, raising awareness on how every corner of the world is being exploited by these occupiers, how they divided Sudan after the Darfur genocide, and how they're exploiting that now.
Essentially, North Sudan was stripped of all its financial capacity to present any kind of a problem to Benjamin Netanyahu. So South Sudan then sort of saw itself, aflush with these like newfound riches, right? And these riches didn't come without strings attached. One of the strings attached is some of the things we've been seeing over the past few weeks, where Donald Trump's most outrageous, outlandish ideas that no one else has been willing to accept always seem to find an audience in South Sudan. So, for example, the decision to start deporting people to third countries, that's these countries are not the countries that they come from, and it's not the country they're being deported from. So it's a third country that has absolutely nothing to do with this person. And these are some of the very worst people in the world. So you have child molesters, you have rapists, you have people who rape people living with mental disabilities. You had all sorts of things, kidnappers, drug traffickers on that list. And the South Sudanese government say, hey, we'll happily take them in because the US is looking for a destination for these people, right? So essentially, South Sudan has taken up a role as the dustbin of the US empire, and it's a permanent role. It's a role that isn't going to stop. I believe this came out in the news that South Sudan was being spoken to about the possibility of taking in Palestinians.
Yeah.
Who are supposedly due to be evicted from Gaza. I mean, anyone who has any sort of basic historical awareness on this entire continent knows that that would be an absolute disaster. Under no circumstances should South Sudan or any African country allow itself to be used as the destination for people who are being expelled from their own land. It's not going to end well, not for them and not for the country in question. But South Sudan officially put out a disclaimer saying they are not in any such conversations. But I believe this was the Telegraph. The story came out the day after the denial. And it said that even though they put out the denial, that the source that Telegraph has been speaking to is positive, that there are four-way talks going on about the expulsion of Gazans from Gaza, and that South Sudan is involved in those talks. So essentially, this independence that South Sudan was gifted by virtue of the US, this independence from North Sudan isn't independence at all. They basically turned into a geopolitical vassal state of the US, and not in a good way at all.
We are also a dumping ground for immigrants that, they go and they ravage some country and then they flood our country with immigrants, with illegal immigrants, and then they turn us against each other, right? As if the immigrants are doing something terrible. You know what I mean? And so we have to help each other recalibrate so that we understand who the enemy is. Our officers have more power than they know to protect their families and friends, their loved ones, from the elites that are exploiting their bravery. And I don't mean picking up arms. I mean putting down the badge. Just put it down. Say that psychologically you cannot do this job right now. You need a psychological break or something. And just don't do it. Would you rather them exploit you to destroy your own country? To destroy your own civil liberties and the civil liberties of your families and friends? We have to say no. And mean no. We have to be brave. Whatever our differences are, it can wait. Now, before I go, I want to share something that made me very happy and so proud to be an American because it was a display of courage and integrity.
You better take your hands off me right now. I'll say it one time.
Give it.
have the right to
Now, this man could have been a pro-Palestinian, pro-humanist person or a Zionist, whatever his position is. He did not smack this woman down for being an entitled brat who assaulted someone. The police officer was assertive, but he wasn't unnecessarily violent. That's courage. That's bravery. That's a man. But honestly, she did deserve to be zip-tied and hauled away. She really did. That was like a straight-on assault. How dare you? Anyway, no, but round of applause for that really, really brave officer. Thank you, officer. Anyway, I am heading out. If I don't see you in the comments, leave me a thumbs up to let me know that you're here, and I cannot wait to see you in my next episode.